All right.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 proposed diocesan, Episcopal Diocese of Oklahoma proposed diocesan budget call. My name is Leslie. I'll be your MC today, which is, the most exciting thing we've done in the last 4 years is MCing the budget call. This morning, if you will just notate, please keep your microphone on mute. We will have some presentations and then we'll do Q&A at the end. Feel free as we go along to use your chat box for questions. I'll be monitoring those and we will ensure that every question that we have is answered. However, please just make sure that we hold those either in the chat box during the presentation, or you ask those questions at the very end so we can make sure that everyone is able to hear them and that all the presentations can be heard. If you have a problem getting in and out again, or you believe that you missed some of the call, have no fear. We'll have this up on the diocesan page on the convention website under budget on Monday, by Monday at 3 o'clock or so, once I edit it. If you have any other questions about convention or any other questions about the budget, please feel free to reach out to events@epiok.org or Ken and Will at wbuchanan@epiok.org. With that, Bishop.
Fantastic. Good morning, everybody. Let's begin with prayer. Let us pray. Direct us, O Lord, in all our doings with your most gracious favor, and further us with your continual help, that in all our work, begun, continued, and ended in you, we may glorify your holy name, and finally, by your mercy, obtain everlasting life through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
It's great to see everybody, and I begin with just some kind of higher level remarks, and then we get into the actual detail of all of this with Henry and with Will. And so just a few sort of general things to get us started today, and then the real experts will take over. I'm really grateful to Henry, our diocesan treasurer, to our budget and finance committees, which are separate committees, to Ken and Will and his whole team. It really is just a continual honor and a joy to serve with these wonderful and dedicated volunteers and staff who do such a tremendous job on all of this. This budget process, I've been here now a little over 3 years. I've never seen a budget process like our budget process in Oklahoma. It's so thorough and well done. It's a process that takes place over many, many months, over hours and hours and hours of meetings. I'm at some of them, a good number, really, but there are a lot more even that take place. It's a tremendous and very thoughtful process. And so I really am grateful to all of those who have put in their time to put together this draft budget that we're talking about today. And I'm grateful to all of you who are joining us on the call. This is fantastic. We've got, I think, about 40 people more or less who've registered for the call today. And I'm just delighted that you are giving of your valuable Saturday morning to find out a little bit more about an important aspect of our life as a diocese and our mission as a diocese. So thank you for that. We'll be very efficient today. We're going to move things along well. But we'll also have plenty of time to learn about this draft budget and, of course, for questions and so on. When I approach something like our diocesan budget from the perspective of Bishop, I always try to keep in mind sort of big picture principles. And some of the big picture principles for us as we have put this together are first of all, that, of course, we're always fiscally conservative with our diocesan budget. That's consistent year in and year out, because we want to be, of course, good stewards of these resources that have been entrusted to our care by those who have gone before. And so one of the things you'll notice in terms of a headline with this draft budget is that for 2024, it actually goes down a pretty significant amount in both the budgeted expense and the budgeted revenue from the current year that we're in. And there are a number of reasons behind that, including how we are very conservative and cautious in predicting our revenue. But also this gives us lots of flexibility in 2024 that we've gone down somewhat. Flexibility for the financial uncertainties that may come. I think probably all of us have been tracking what's going on economically in our country and our world. There's still a lot of real uncertainties there. We're not quite sure what's going on with inflation. Will there be a mild recession? What's going to happen with oil and gas, with the stock market, and so on. So this is really a very fiscally conservative budget that enables us to be prepared for those uncertainties that may come. And we're also really making a concerted effort to rebuild our endowment. There were some pretty major expenditures from our endowment leading up to 2020. And so we've been trying to really rebuild that endowment to a place of real strength. It's a very strong and healthy endowment, but there was a lot of spending from it. And also, of course, the market has had some difficult time in recent years. So it's a very fiscally conservative budget, and I'm very pleased about that as bishop, that we're keeping it all well under control. Within that fiscally conservative budget, we've got a great deal of investment in what is probably our number one priority, and that is congregational vitality, to build on the vitality that is already present in our congregations and to help our congregations of any size to be even more vital. And so we've got a number of aspects that we'll talk about in this budget that are related to the congregational vitality piece. One of the top line aspects of this is that this proposed budget, again, has mutual ministry support, the contributions of our congregations to the work of the wider church at 15%. We've been able to knock that down from a high of about 22% not that many years ago, down to 15, and we continue to hold steady at 15. The hope is that over time, maybe we can get the national church to budge from their 15 to something lower than that. That would be terrific. If that could happen, that would give us more flexibility with our own mutual ministry support in the diocese to perhaps go a little bit lower. But it's a good solid 15%, which is very much in the range of what you'd find across the church, and a lot lower, again, than it has been at various points in our not too distant past. We have, again, very consistent and strong support for our congregations in lots of different ways. We have some of the most robust financial support for our small congregations of any diocese that I know of, with very consistent amounts that go to our mission congregations, as well as a good amount of money for granting and for training of our small congregations. Especially, we kind of gear things towards our smaller congregations with our vitality work, although of course there's a lot that's beneficial for the larger congregations as well. And we do have a broad variety of resources that we'll get into a little bit later in those particular categories of congregational vitality. Beyond all of that, there are also a number of things that are sort of hidden away in what we might call administrative, a number of aspects that may not be designated as congregational vitality, but certainly help with, I think, in some wonderful ways, the vitality of our congregations. I'm thinking of things like our Martha in this office, who does payroll for almost every one of our congregations across the diocese. Tremendous resource to be able to take on the payroll responsibilities for our churches, helping to manage endowment resources, invested funds, and a whole range of other ways that our administrative staff jump in to help our congregations and our institutions as well as they have needs. And then, of course, this is a budget that has really robust support, as we always do, for children and youth programming. Our summer camp at St. Crispin's had a great summer last year. That continues to be a huge priority for us, and a variety of other children and youth ministries as well throughout the course of the year. So I think it's a really solid budget, a really good budget that has our mission priorities really at the heart. That congregational vitality piece, chief among them. Without vital congregations, I don't think you'd have much of a diocese. And so we continue to focus on those areas in a whole range of ways. So I'm excited about this budget, excited for you to learn more about it this morning in greater detail. And it continues to be a real pleasure and a joy and an honor to be your bishop. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Henry for some more detail. Henry.
Thank you, Bishop. I thought we would start today by just explaining how the budget process works. We begin each spring with a question to the Diocesan Council on any priorities that they would like to see in the budget so that we can get their input in that process. Then each of the program managers begins writing their budget and their plans for the coming year, and they submit that to the accounting area, and they enter all of the stuff into the budget software, and then we begin our process of the budget committee meeting. We met 3 times this year. They're each quite lengthy meetings, and we invite the different program managers to come in and speak to us about their budget. And during that process, we help fine-tune what they plan financially, their needs, to make sure they make sense with what we're seeing in true expenses out in the market, because we don't want to say it's going to cost $50 to stay in a hotel if it's going to cost a little bit more than that. And we know it will. So we adjust the budgets to take care of any of those type of things that financially did not make sense. Once we get all of those modifications in, we sit down and we review the totals. We started the process with the income, so we already have decided what the income will be. And so we then look to see how close the expenses that everyone suggested meets up. And as you could guess, we have to make a few modifications. So after we're done with the modifications, when making those, we do look at the priority of the bishop of congregational vitality. And so if we need to remove funds from somewhere, we will not look first at the vitality. We're going to look somewhere else first. We're also very mindful of the stewardship of our resources and keeping within the endowment spending policy that the council has approved. And we also try to make sure that mutual ministry support won't be raised. If we can, we would look to try and reduce it, if anything. But once we're done with the budget, we bring it to the finance committee. Their purpose is, again, to look to make sure financially it makes sense. The income values we've calculated, they agree with our method of getting to them. And once they have their approval, it goes to diocesan council. The council will approve the budget so that it can be presented to all of you to vote on when we meet at convention. With that, Will's going to go over the details of the budget.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Leslie's going to share the screen. And I'll first cover just kind of a budget overview. Just give us 1 second here. So as you see here, we have the pie chart, which I wanted just to illustrate kind of where our expenses are allocated in the proposed 2024 budget. So as you can see on the far left-hand side, the upper left-hand side, the congregational support and vitality is the largest chunk of the expenditures. And that is just our renewed focus on our congregations and supporting the vitality work that's actually already occurring, as Bishop mentioned, at our congregations, as well as offering continued trainings and so on and so forth that really aid to congregational vitality. And I'll cover that a little bit when we cover the 2024 budget. The second large item is administrative, and it's probably a little bit of a misnomer in that, the administrative is kind of a catch-all. However, there's a lot of congregational vitality that's included in the administrative. As Bishop mentioned earlier, there are individuals in our office that fall under that administrative tag. I think of the person who processes our payroll and benefits, and the bishop falls under that tag, and then the canon to the ordinary. Although they do an extensive amount of work with congregational vitality, they do fall in the administrative function. So while that number does appear a little bit high in terms of representing about a third of our expenses, there is a significant amount of congregational vitality work that's within that administrative bucket as well.
Want to go into the line by line?
Yeah, so next we'll cover the line by line 2024 budget. I'll cover some just the higher level items, if you will, but if you do have any questions, just feel free to either raise your hand or use the chat box, and we'll address those questions if you want further detail on a particular line item that I covered, or want some additional explanations on line items that I didn't cover. That's okay. Okay. So the first item is mutual ministry support. So looking at mutual ministry support, what we do is look at historical trends of where we stand in mutual ministry support, as look at where we're currently at today. And with that being said, our mutual ministry support for the 2023 cycle is actually well ahead of where we're at in the budget. It's been a fantastic year to congregations in terms of plate and pledge, which is great. But we wanted to express a level of conservatism on all our income line items. Given that 2024, we just don't know what that withholds from an economic and a fiscal standpoint. And so we kept that consistent with the 2023 budget. I think that's a very, very conservative measure, given where we stand today, but we wanted to express a level of conservatism on the mutual ministry support line item when it comes to the income received. The endowment and trust income is broken up between two specific line items, and I'll cover both individually. The first one is our endowment draw. As Bishop mentioned, that we've really tried to limit our endowment draw, which you can see the 2022 actuals are about $1 million, about $1.5 million less than what we actually budgeted for, with the goal of just restabilizing and building back our endowments. I'm pleased to say our endowment now is above $50 million, which is the first time it's been above $50 million in 4 years, if you will. But we also want to continue that momentum. And so one thing we've done is limited our endowment draws to 4.5%. That's based on a 5-year rolling average. And so just really limiting that and really utilizing other resources to fund operations that aren't endowments. The second piece is the Chapman distribution. So it's an unrestricted bequest that we get, or unrestricted contribution we get from our Chapman fund. The Chapman fund has about a $20 million balance in there, and we get about $800,000 on an annual basis. That's for unrestricted purposes. Looking at the oil and gas income, this is incredibly difficult to forecast, because as you're aware, what you pay at the pump does fluctuate pretty significantly year over year. Once again, we did express a significant level of conservatism. We are well ahead of the 2023 budget. As oil trades at $80 a barrel, we definitely see the contributions from royalty payments when it trades at that level. However, given the uncertainty with the market and what 2024 holds, we thought that we'd express another level of conservatism there, and we settled at about $1.1 million. And the $1.1 million is really based off of looking at historical data and then just eliminating those quote unquote outliers where oil was trading at $90+ a barrel, as we saw in 2022. And so we really wanted to right size that and do something that's probably a little bit more conservative, if you will. I do anticipate that number probably being a little bit higher for the 2024 year, but there's with so much uncertainty, it's hard to say. So that's why we really just limited that oil and gas income to the $1.1 million, which is pretty consistent with what we had in the previous year. Going to the summer camp registration. So as Bishop mentioned, we had a very, very successful summer camp. One of the big items is that we did institute a $50 summer camp registration fee increase in 2023. Don't anticipate any significant increases in terms of the actual price. We do want to kind of set a 3 to 5% increase on an annual basis just to keep up with the not only inflation but really what St. Crispin's charges us for both meals and lodging, because that represents the largest expense item, and so we just really want to keep up with the largest expense item and what those price increases reflect. And so but once again, we're a very successful year. We're not quite back to pre-pandemic levels. We were about 450 pre-pandemic, and this year I believe we're about 410. So still getting there. Do anticipate some increase as well as number of campers as well going to the 2024 budget cycle. Not a significant number, but we do anticipate an increase in the number of campers in 2024.
Both the questions that come in are expense questions.
Okay.
So we move on to expenses.
Yeah, if you would mind. So expenses, and I'll cover some high level expenses. So if you scroll up into the administrative section, Leslie.
Yep.
So looking at the expense section, the first item I'll cover is the Diocesan Center. Kept this amount consistent with the 2022 actuals. One thing that we've really noticed is that we've had a significant amount of savings when we switched over from we switched property insurance providers to the tune of about $30,000, and so that's why we see such a significant decrease when it comes to the 2023 budget as opposed to the 2024 budget. So that's one thing that we really focus on every year is working with our vendors, soliciting bids, going after proposals on all our major vendors, and so we really try to keep an eye on that line item when it comes to expenses, and really do our due diligence when it comes to just really minimizing the expenses that we incur to really maintain this facility, because that represents the majority of the expenses when it comes to the Diocesan Center. The Bishop's office, it's pretty consistent with the 2023 budget. We'll note that we'll note some small increases to the tune of 3 to 5% amongst a lot of these budget line items. That's salary and benefits increases that we budgeted for. So pretty nominal amount in terms of those increases when it comes to salary. Now, benefits, when it comes to church insurance, that's anybody's guess. And so we did budget about a 5% increase when it comes to church insurance. And so that's also pretty consistent with what we've had over the previous 6 years. Going into the CFO's office. As Bishop mentioned, a lot of that's the 681 is about a 4% increase when we compare to 2023. Included in that number is a significant amount of congregational vitality work or institutional work. And so we do have essentially 1.5 employees. One employee devotes all their time and attention to payroll and processing payroll on behalf of all our congregations. And that's pretty much a full-time job. That is a significant cost burden that the diocese has actually taken on. To the tune of about, just processing payroll is about $150,000 value that we provide to our congregations between salary, benefits, and actually paying for all the fees associated with payroll processing, because we use a third-party payroll processor, and those fees, it's not cheap in terms of what that is. And so that's what we incur all that expense. We don't pass that on to our congregations. And we just really think that helps out with vitality and one less administrative task that our congregations have to worry about. The other piece in there is, we have an employee that really devotes probably 3/4 of their time and attention to St. Crispin's and the bookkeeping and compliance related items for St. Crispin's. So that's in that number as well. So while it does appear to be a higher budgetary line item, it's a lot of it's vitality relating to not only our congregations, but our institutions as well. Okay. If we scroll down, I'll cover some of the items in the children, youth, and young adult programming. So summer camp we do anticipate an increase for St. Crispin's. St. Crispin's, one thing that we've noted, and being, wearing kind of dual hats and working with St. Crispin's as well as the diocese, is that, it's a very, very expensive place to run, not only just from a maintenance standpoint, but, escalating food prices and so on and so forth. So we do anticipate an increase when it comes to the fee structure of summer camp. And then the other piece is to be fully staffed at summer camp, we need 25 to 30 staffers. which is a pretty significant cost outlay, not only for the payroll, but when we have 25 to 30 staffers, we have to pay for not only food, but as well as lodging over the 6/7 weeks of summer camp. So pretty significant amount when it comes to that. And in the 2023 budget, we weren't quite fully staffed, and so we are projecting in 2024 to be fully staffed. Covering a couple of different items, the youth board graduate send-off and youth ministers retreat. You will notice that those items are quote unquote zero. One thing that we wanted to do is really consolidate some of the programming to give Kate and her team a little bit more flexibility in terms of what they're going to use the programming monies for. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be youth board graduate send-off or youth ministries retreat. Those items are actually just rolled into Ages and Stages. And so the Ages and Stages program is really just everything that's devoted to providing the youth training. So that would be the youth board, the graduate send-off, and so on and so forth.
Do you want to do clergy and lay training support?
Yeah, we'll scroll down. We'll just continue scrolling down.
I have to move the page if I scroll down. That's why I'm
Okay.
leaving it there.
Scrolling down in the budget, under clergy and lay training support. If you keep on scrolling down, Leslie, the first item I'll cover is curacy. One of the items in curacy, so we have 2 curates, and the curacy their curacy ends in mid 2024. We are working internally and have some discussions about utilizing and soliciting and attracting additional curates to fill that void, if you will. And if you're not aware of the curacy program, it's essentially we place someone that's newly ordained to the priesthood at a congregation, and the diocese pays for 1/2, and then the congregation pays for 1/2. So we are having some internal conversations about what 2024 looks like, especially in the second half of 2024, really trying to fill that void, if you will, when it comes to the curacies. And scrolling down, in terms of the other significant line items when it comes to total clergy aid and training. One of the big items you'll notice is the Iona Lay Leadership Program. So one of the items that's that's coming out of our congregational vitality work is we need to invest. We're going to print out this paper to give recommendations when it comes to congregational vitality, but we need to also invest in both our lay as well as our clergy. And so this particular program is essentially it's a list of offerings that was previously included under the congregational vitality budget. We're going to use this budgetary line item for really 3 purposes. The first is to fund an alternative model for retreats. The second is to support the ongoing work associated with findings from the congregational vitality assessment. So that'd be just additional trainings related to that. And the third is to really support some really non-annualized events that come up on an as-needed basis, really as a result of not only our congregational vitality, but really listening to our congregations on what's really limiting them in terms of the vitality work, and how can we be a partner and offer some of these quote-unquote non-annualized trainings, if you will. Covering the School of Spiritual Direction. The School of Spiritual Direction is currently in its 3rd year, having completed the first cohort in 2023. The program's intent is to train and prepare spiritual directors in the diocese. It's a 2-year program currently with a prerequisite requirement. The program also does include, from an expense standpoint, a 1 annual retreat for students supporting their growth and education. The second cohort, which is included in some of these budgetary items, will begin in August 2023 and follow an academic cycle with graduation in June of 2025. Okay, as we scroll down, congregational support and vitality. When it comes to congregational support, you scroll.
Sorry. I know, so we had broke up on them.
Okay, so the first item there, you will notice a decrease from 2023 to 2024 budgets. That's really not a decrease in terms of what we're actually providing from congregational supports. It's more just a timing issue, and so we previously had paid in the 2023 budget cycle for a full-time priest at one of our locations. That priest is no longer there, and so it's really just a timing issue in terms of, really a timing issue in terms of we're not paying the full freight of a full-time priest and benefits. Actually, our congregational support actually went up in terms of what we're actually going to give our mission congregations on a monthly basis. Did increase that amount. Also included in that amount is money set aside for congregational vitality grants, a pretty significant amount, about $175,000 that we're setting aside for not only congregational vitality work, but as well as, some money set aside to really partner with some of our congregations to really aid in their vitality work. And then we also set aside about $85,000 for primarily focused really on our mission congregations for significant capital repairs. If a water heater goes out or they get a significant rainstorm and they can't afford the full deductible. So we do set aside money when it comes to that and really, supporting some of our congregations. With that being said, we do have a policy with our mission congregations that we won't pay for more than half. So we do cap that, and they do have their fair share to actually contribute, but we want to set some money aside to really come alongside them from a financial standpoint and help them with some of these significant costs. I'll cover two items that are pretty consistent. So Santa Maria is the second line item there, and then Espiritu Santo, the last item there. We did decrease the support for both of those congregations, and one thing that we're really encouraging and we're really working towards is really giving more responsibility to their respective bishops' committees. With both of those institutions, we do all the bookkeeping and prepare all their budgets. But one thing that we're working towards, especially in the 24 cycle, is really moving that over to their congregations and then actually tasking them to really help support their congregations through designated stewardship. And so we're really challenging each of these congregations, both Santa Maria and Espiritu, to really tap into their congregations from stewardship and really help the financial sustainability of those individual congregations and putting that onus more so on the bishops' committee as opposed to really the diocese. Okay, no, I'll set that. Another thing too on the congregational support item, we did actually increase the supply priest rates by about $300 for each of our supply priests, and so that's another increase in congregational support that we do provide. And so what we provide to our mission congregations will increase to about $300 to $500 in the 2024 budget cycle. Last item I'll cover under that is the canon of congregational vitality. This is a significant investment that we're also making as well to aid in the congregational vitality support. Some of the things that's included in those particular line items is really just trainings for specific congregational vitality items and putting on conferences and workshops. And then we also are devising a model to have essentially a group of 10 or so people that will be paid people to act as essentially ambassadors for congregational vitality that will cover the entire state or all 6 regions here in the Diocese of Oklahoma. And so we allotted about $40,000 for that to aid in the congregational vitality and really having these ambassadors come out and working directly with these congregations with their vitality, needs, questions, concerns, et cetera. And it's really taking a collaborative approach here at the diocesan office and investing in that so we can kind of liaison with our congregations to really get an idea of what they're struggling with, some good ideas, and really just kind of bridging that gap in terms of communication. Okay. We scroll down to keep scrolling, Leslie.
If I go, are you going to cover outreach?
Yeah, I'll cover just one brief
I
item.
can't scroll without
Okay.
it going to the next page.
One item I'll cover in diocesan outreach is disaster relief. So while we do budget about $9,300 to assist as disasters do occur, we do want to have some money set aside to provide those in need for disasters. One thing that we also do, especially with our smaller congregations, is when disasters do occur, we work with our congregations and we become the liaison in terms of collecting contributions and soliciting contributions on their behalf and really try to take that administrative burden off of our congregations. So much so, if you look at the 2022 figures, we had $33,000 of money that we raised and we actually sent to 2 of our congregations as a result of the tornadoes that happened in early 2023. And so that's another added benefit that we provide to our congregations, and we can provide some of that administrative work when it comes to those disaster related items, and just really partnering with those congregations to take that administrative burden off them.
Ready to move on to the next page?
Yeah, so if you want to go down to institutional support. Last couple of items I'll cover on the institutional support. The first item is Ardmore Village. So we did decrease the support for Ardmore Village, and while our institutions do play a very vital role in our diocese, one thing that we're really looking at is kind of from a long-term perspective, or from a financial perspective as well, is what is the financial burden when it comes to our institutions. And so one of those things required us to make some decisions regarding, what is really should be the standardized supports for some of our institutions, especially our retirement facilities. And so we did modify the amount that we're going to give to Ardmore Village by about $25,000 as a part of kind of our long-term strategic plan when it comes to our relationship with some of our institutions, especially some of the retirement facilities. And then the last item I'll cover is the St. Crispin's Conference Center. If this year told us anything, is that St. Crispin's has actually had a fantastic year. They're probably going to come in about $500,000 over budget on the revenue side, and that's just due to the tremendous work that Alton and Joy have done. But that's just been a real reflection on what St. Crispin's can become. And so one of the things that we're going to challenge St. Crispin's on is that we want a steady path of sustainable diocesan supports. St. Crispin's will always require diocesan support, which is actually pretty consistent with the industry and diocesan supported / owned camp and conference centers. But we really want to taper that off to have a really consistent annual financial supports that just doesn't continue to increase year over year over year. And so we decreased that about increased that at $10,000 from 2023 to 2024, with the hope of discussing with the new executive director about ways in which we can slowly taper that amount down to more sustainable amounts. And so that's the ultimate goal when it comes to St. Crispin's Camp and Conference Center. Okay.
Do you want to take questions or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll open the floor to questions
in the chat.
Yes, we do. Is the financial support for prison ministry up, down, or flat in this budget? Going up, back up to prison ministry.
should be pretty flat, but
It's right here.
yeah. So
So you want me to talk sort of big picture about prison
Sure.
ministry, and then you can take
yeah,
that.
that'd be great.
Great. So in terms of our prison ministry, and Ken will give a little bit of the detail in terms of the dollars and cents here in just a second, but sort of big picture, over the last several years with our prison ministry, we've had a shift from really what was a very kind of top-down approach, kind of run by the diocesan center, to an approach that is much more dispersed and relying on a couple of different things. The congregations themselves that are close to our prisons, which really have a particular investment responsibility there. And also we've got a committee of folks who volunteer their time to work together on how to support our various prison ministries. We do continue to have Nancy Brock with us on staff. That's now a part-time role, but we're continuing to be blessed by Nancy and her work in helping to coordinate and empower those various groups. So prison ministry certainly continues to be an important thing. One of my planned visits in the next year is to spend time in one of our prisons there, and I'm looking forward to that. And I think Ken and Betsy may be doing the same as well. But it is that more dispersed approach rather than that sort of top-down piece. And so with that, Ken and Will can talk a little bit about the dollars and cents.
So the amount is actually relatively flat when we compare the 2023 to 2024 budget. Do have about a $2,000 increase. The increase is primarily attributable to the prison ministry requires a significant amount of travel to our prisons throughout the state. And depending on the reimbursement rate that the IRS publicizes, that results in the significant fluctuation when it comes to prison ministry, because travel represents about half, a little less than half of what the actual expenses incurred for prison ministry. And so kind of at the whim of oil and gas prices and the IRS rate. And so we did budget for a higher IRS reimbursement rate when it comes to 2024.
I just want to give a shout out as well, of course, to Magdalene House OKC, which is making great progress in terms of getting up and running a fantastic ministry that, while not a diocesan ministry per se, certainly has a number of different folks from around our Episcopal diocese involved with it. And of course, Magdalene House OKC is going to be a tremendous asset for women who have been incarcerated and the support that they need as they re-enter society. So really excited to see the continued progress with Magdalene House OKC, which was our recipient, of course, for the Bishop's Appeal a couple of years ago.
I'm gonna go up. There was a question if we cut events, just curious as to what's up with the $94,000 budget cut to special events and registration fees income item. Go up back. Whoop. This one.
So the short answer is yes, but it's still to be determined. So the biggest event that's not reflected in this budget is our annual pilgrimage, which if you look at 2023 is about $70,000. It's really a net zero from a budgetary line item. One thing that we'll have some internal conversations about is what is that pilgrimage going to look like in 2024? Given just the time of when it actually occurs and that it occurs over summer, and who's responsible for administering that program, given from a staff capacity constraint, and that Teresa's out at summer camp for the entire summer, and then Kate has a significant amount on her plate when it comes to the summer. So one thing we're having some internal conversations about what that pilgrimage is actually going to look like. And so as it stands now, that results is that is the biggest decrease when it comes to the 2024 special event and registration income. With that being said, if we did add that back into the budget, that's really a net zero budget in terms of our registration fees typically correspond to the expenses incurred. And so if we do something in terms of the pilgrimage that may take a different shape and form, we would add that back after the budget, but we still need to have some additional conversations about what that's going to look like in the 2024. And given that we don't know to date if we're going to have that, that's why that's not included in the budget, and that's why there's such a significant decrease in the special event registration fee line item.
Bishop's outreach. There's a question if is that in the outreach piece? Well, yeah. Is $20,000 enough?
Oh yeah, I can talk about that.
Or is the difference go to other line items that the person who asked just missed?
I see. So I can take a little bit of a bite at that apple, and then Will may want to jump in with some of that too. So, of course, in terms of the outreach piece, we've got a number of different buckets for outreach, and we see some of that there under the diocesan outreach category, and there are other pieces as well, sort of in various spots. I would say, I'm certainly very comfortable with that amount, the $20,000 for the bishop's outreach on several levels. One, that we do have those other buckets for outreach that we can draw on. Two, as Ken and Will said, if we have, for example, things like a tornado, and we know we're always going to have those. We have some kind of natural disaster within Oklahoma. We have been able to rally pretty quickly to support those who are in need, kind of on a case-by-case basis, depending on what actually is needed. And I would say also in terms of Bishop's outreach, but part of my philosophy with Bishop's outreach is I really like to keep that as local as possible. So in general, this reflects less sort of funding of big outreach institutions outside of the diocese doing various things. Certainly, they do good work. But my main focus really is on our diocese and on the things that we do here by and large. And so I think that's part of that, is that the focus is much more on those particular outreach aspects of the Episcopal Church within our diocese, and also those wonderful mission partners that we have in Oklahoma who are not Episcopalians themselves, but do incredible work to help the vulnerable and being able to do that. So I'd say by and large, my outreach is focused on those various local entities within Oklahoma that do great work for our own folks. Although, of course, there's some support for things outside of the diocese as well. But I'm comfortable, again, with a budget that has a little bit of a decline overall in terms of expense. We've sort of trimmed some expense. What that means by definition is you can't do everything at the same level. You got to make some choices. And I feel comfortable about the choices we've made, particularly in terms of the congregational vitality piece, in terms of really helping to resource our congregations. And that's meant having to trim a few other things.
Bishop, that
Yeah.
I would just like to say too, I don't believe that number includes from your discretionary fund. I think I don't think we have really a budget for that because it's various.
So you
Oh, it's in
wanna-
there, okay.
Yeah,
you
so
wanna jump in, Will?
yeah, the biggest change then in terms of the $25,000 is and the $25,000 previously also included a support for St. Simeon's Western Days. And so what we did was we actually reallocated that amount. So the $25,000, we made a decision internally that we're going to provide St. Simeon's a stated amount. And if we scroll down, Leslie,
Yeah.
I think it's to the tune of
45,000.
45,000. And so, his outreach included not only outreach to, different groups here in Oklahoma, but a significant amount of that outreach, over half of it was St. Simeon's Western Days. And so that amount was actually moved to the St. Simeon support. And so the St. Simeon support is going to include the 45,000, which is just a lump sum that we actually provide in terms of both operational support and our contribution to Western Days.
We have a question. Our next question is, how many seminarians are we supporting? Are they Iona only or residential as well?
Yeah, so I can jump in on some of this, and again, as Will or Henry want to jump in, they can do that as well. So we have, if we think big picture about clergy and how we train clergy in Oklahoma, there's no question that there is a major shift that's happening. And it's a shift towards more bivocational priests and permanent deacons within our diocese that we train through our Iona program at St. Crispin's. And the Iona program is fantastic. Really excited to have Dion Kreider as the new dean for our Iona clergy training program. He's off to a fabulous start. So I think as we move forward, we're going to see more and more folks as they come through our ordination process for bivocational priests and permanent deacons trained locally in Iona. Of the folks that I ordained to the priesthood last June, basically all of them are serving in various ways in part-time capacities. So that's the sort of big picture. And of course, we invest tremendously in that Iona program and in the folks who are going through Iona. Having said that, we will always continue to have some folks who are in residential seminary who are looking for full-time ministry within our diocese. That will always be a part of our life, though I think less than it has been at various points in the past. And so at the moment, we've got a wonderful young woman who has just started at Seminary of the Southwest. And so we've got some pretty robust support for her as a seminarian there. And I imagine just knowing kind of who's in the pipeline, we'll continue to have some additional folks entering into residential seminary. But at the moment, at this current time, we have one in residential seminary.
Can you speak to what clergy scholarships are as compared to seminarian support?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, the seminarian support is kind of the broad stroke of, supporting both seminarians as well as in residential seminary, as well as supporting, those quote unquote seminarians in the ILO program. The clergy scholarships is, one of the things we want to do to really just, really attract and retain clergy is provide clergy with school age kids scholarships to send our kids to, or excuse me, send their kids to Episcopal schools. And so that's what this clergy scholarship is that that is the diocesan commitment to help our clergy who have school age kids who want to send their kids to Episcopal schools, to help them to provide a share of that cost. And so that's what the clergy scholarship is the scholarships to clergy for to send their kids to Episcopal schools.
It's really a fantastic program. I have heard on a number of different occasions from Nathan Sheldon, who's the head of Cassidy School here in Oklahoma City. I've heard Nathan say several times what a blessing it is to Cassidy to have a number of different clergy families involved with the life of the school, that it really, of course, it's a blessing to the clergy families, but it's also a blessing to the school to have those clergy kids around.
And we send that opportunity, an email goes out to all of the clergy who have children that live in the Oklahoma City, Tulsa, or Ardmore area. So that all those clergy are given the opportunity to apply, and we make sure every year that we audit that and ensure that everyone is communicated that could possibly be qualified for that.
It really is a great recruiting tool for us, as we have clergy openings in areas where we have our Episcopal schools, and of course, not just Holland Hall in Tulsa and Cassidy School in Oklahoma City, but also Oak Hall and in Ardmore. We have a number of other schools as well, but those are sort of the biggest ones. It's just a great thing with our recruiting to be able to say, hey, by the way, if you choose to do so, we've got some tremendous Episcopal schools, and the diocese can help with some of that expense. Anything else in the chat?
I don't have anything else in the chat. Let me look around. Oh, question from St. Paul's group. Is it possible to switch property insurance providers for significant savings?
Yeah, so we provide two possibilities when it comes to insurance providers, and there's two that we've really vetted to make sure that we have kind of the minimum insurance requirements. So we have Bank First, and then we've also utilized Guide One, and given that opportunity to our congregations to switch. If you're interested in knowing more when it comes to that, you can actually email Martha Smith at msmith@epiok.org in terms of getting quotes from both insurance providers, as well as if you do want to switch, she can kind of give you the next steps. Now is probably a really good time to start to making those considerations as you start to prepare your 2024 budget, and really getting quotes as your insurance starts to, several months before it starts to expire or begins to expire.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Those are all the questions from the chat. Are there other questions that folks have? In which case you can, I don't know, raise your hand, jump up and down.
This is a question that Stephen Ritter
Okay.
from St. James Wagner had. St. James is currently looking to do signage. Where or how can we get our property perimeters? Oh, we probably have that down in the archives, you think?
Yeah, we may have that information down in the archives. The best, yeah, if you want to send me an email, then I can get you in contact with our realtor who has that, should have that information. It may require a survey and a little bit more detail. So I'm not certain that, he can give you all the information you need, but he can give you some kind of a roadmap to, who you need to reach out to get that information.
Great question. Are there other questions that folks have, either to plug into the chat or to jump up and down, get our attention? This is sort of like at a wedding, you know, speak now or else forever hold your peace. Not forever.
Or ordination.
Okay, fabulous. Well, I mean, I want to just say a couple of quick things and then again, let things close with certainly with any final words from Henry and from Will. Please know that in all seriousness, this is of course not at all your last opportunity. If you've got questions about the budget, you are always welcome to reach out to Henry, welcome to reach out to Will. We'd be very glad at any point to answer questions and dig a little deeper as you wish. And so please do feel free to reach out in that way. If you get that just brilliant question that comes as soon as we finish the Zoom call, we'll be very glad to help with that. And do remember that this is a process that involves the whole diocese, including through our diocesan council. As Henry was saying, the process for the budget begins with work that happens with the diocesan council and sort of higher level work on priorities within our diocese. So we truly all get a number of opportunities to weigh in on it. And again, just my deep thanks, not only to those who've been involved in putting this budget together, but also to all of you for the time you're giving on this call. And I'm very excited to see, I know many of you, probably most of you, at our diocesan convention coming up at St. Crispin's. We have a fantastic convention planned again at St. Crispin's, including a wonderful guest, Jay Sidebotham, who will be giving a workshop and preaching. You've hopefully seen his wonderful little cartoon for convention. He's a well-known cartoonist in addition to being a great speaker. So we're really excited for our diocesan convention, which is just right around the corner. Any final words from Henry and from Will?
If you do have the ability as delegates to convention to ask questions at convention, and you can also request for votes for modifications at that time. So you do still have an opportunity to give us your input to the budget at convention. I'd suggest you contact us ahead of time because the budget still has to be balanced at the end of the convention.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, I would echo that. If you do have any specific questions or want to dig into something a little bit in a little bit more detail, Leslie put my email in the chat box and feel free to reach out to me.
All right, seeing no other questions, again, thanks to everybody. A nice crisp hour for our budget call this year. Well done, everyone. Have a great day and stay cool out there, friends. Thank you.